hotel and there's a door that opens a light. He can't open the door. He can't open the door to a closet, to a bathroom. Could he have a guy open the door for him? A person left clothing in the dryer. Very common shaila. And the clothing is all dry, ready to wear, but you open the dryer door, the light goes on. A person bought items for Shabbos, left it in the car. So to open the car door, you put the light on. So you probably realize, I guess, the crux of the issue today is a very simple but a very common question. For me to open a refrigerator door and put on the light is what's called a pesik reisha. I'm opening a refrigerator door, very innocent, but you can't be, in the dream world. Opening a refrigerator door is putting on a light. Can I instruct a guy to innocently open the refrigerator, but it will definitely put on the light? In other words, pesik reisha by a yid has an halacha, as we know, is asa. Is there any het to pesik reisha by a guy? And I will see probably 20 other shilas about pesik reisha regarding a guy. And I guess part 2 is if there's no guy available, same question, a refrigerator or a dryer, is there any het to ask a very young child innocently, open the dryer and take out your clothing? But he doesn't know, but he'll find out sooner or later that he's putting on a light. So one thing we all know, pesik reisha on Shabbos is a very serious issue. There's Gemara in 11 places. You'll look on the side of Masechta Shabbos, Ksub, Sukkah, all the 11 places. Pesik reisha is also on Shabbos. Now, to give one mashal that we could relate to, which is common, we just had the Yom Tov of Sukkot. A person is eating his Shabbos or Yom Tov Suda, and he has to wash until Yadayim. It's a mitzvah d'Rabbanan. And he's washing his hands, Mekayim a mitzvah d'Rabbanan, for the Suda. But he's washing it over grass. And the water's going directly onto the grass. So you might say he's doing a mitzvah. What should be a problem if someone does a mitzvah? But that's where pesik reisha comes in. Rabbi Yid, you have to be realistic. You're washing your hands is a wonderful mitzvah. But washing with water on grass is watering the grass. So your action inevitably is watering grass. And this is the Mechab and Shin Lamed Vav Siv Gimel. If you wash your hands outdoors, even though you're not Mechaben to water the grass, it's a pesik reisha. Now, this is a perfect example of pesik reisha, because the person is doing something that's watering the grass, but he's really arguing, I don't want to water the grass. I want to just do the mitzvah until Yadayim. So we tell him very politely, if you don't want to water the grass, don't water the grass. But you can't wash your hands over the grass, water the grass, but I'm not doing it. There's no such thing. You can't split an action. In other words, pesik reisha is not creating an issa, it's just identifying it. You're washing your hands over grass, that's the issa pesik reisha. But what's really very informative, Rashi in Sukkah Lamed Gimel explains, what's pesik reisha? We say pesik reisha. So Rashi has a very interesting mashal, I must tell you. Rashi and the Rambam says this, in the olden days, children played with heads of chickens. Heads as in headless chicken. They cut off the head and they play with the head. Today a child sees a chicken, he runs the other way. They're very interesting children. They play with the head of a chicken. So someone says, I want to play with the head, give me the head. So he doesn't want to kill the chicken, chas v'shalom. He wants just to play with the head, but without the rest of the chicken. So you can't do that. The kivan ef sheshalai tamus kemechaven chashivle. Rashi's are very important words. If you want to cut off the head of a chicken to play with it, but you don't want to kill it, that's totally unrealistic. So when you do decide to cut off the head of the chicken, kemechaven chashivle. In other words, you have to be realistic. You can't live in denial. When you cut off the head of a chicken to play with it, you're mechaben for shchita. I am not mechaben for shchita. There's no such thing. You can't cut off the head without killing it. Now, this is why the poskim say a pesik reisha denichale is an issa d'oraisa. It's not just a frumkeit. You're doing the issa is cutting off the head, and that's what you're doing. Oy bazoi. Since pesik reisha denichale is an issa d'oraisa, how could I ask a guy to do it? We know whatever's asa for a yid to do, you can have a guy do. A Rav told me once, people think that Amira Leakum is not only a heta, but it's a way of life. Pesik reisha is not a heta, it's not a way of life. You can't do a pesik, Amira Leakum is not a heta and not a way of life. Oy bazoi, since we just proved that pesik reisha by a yid is a reisha, so how could you instruct a guy to do a pesik reisha? But there seems to be not one but two mekayres that maybe pesik reisha by a guy is more mutter, and once we figure that out, we could apply that to the many shilas. In those days, they had a different lifestyle. They didn't have ovens like we have. They had basically a fireplace. And they kept coals that were hot, and the coals kept the food. Some of them immersed the pots into the coals to get it really hot. And that's why you should know, when you had a fire, when you had a food on the fire, you had to have a blech. Why do you have to have a blech between the pot and the coals? So we know the Gemara is Shemi Yechata. What does it mean, Shemi Yechata? If someone stirs the coals, that's the Issa the reisha of Avara. The Gemara says in Daf Chav, Ha'choyte begecholim b'Shabbos chayiv chatas. Stirring coals, moving coals, really reignites the flame, and that's the Issa of Avara. So the Arzaru and Hilchos Erev Shabbos Siman Ches, one of the G'dolei Rishonim, has the following shaila. Zakta Arzaru, if you have a pot that's on the coals, on top of the coals, there's no issa to take the pot off, because you're not stirring the coals. The pot is on top of the coals. But let's say the pot is embedded in the coals, so when you take out the pot innocently to have cholent l'kavod Shabbos, an innocent act, but inevitably you are being mechata gecholim. Zakti Arzarua, that's pesik reisha. You have to be realistic. Taking out the pot is a ma'isa mitzvah of giving cholent l'kavod Shabbos, but you're inevitably stirring the coals. That's mechata b'gecholim, that's asa. Zakti Arzarua, I don't know why people think it's mutter to have a guy bring you the cholent pot. Just like a yid is not allowed to take out the pot, because pesik reisha of mechata b'gecholim is asa. So whatever's asa by a yid is asa by a guy, up to Arzarua. You're innocently asking him, just bring me the pot of cholent. You're not telling him to stir the coals. That's where pesik reisha fits in. So here we see from the Arzarua, and I must mention I found a half a dozen Rishonim, literally a Mordechai, a Rabbi Yakov Zev, and others, all say this yesod. If it's taka pesik reisha, you're going to stir the coals, that's havara. A yid can't do it, and lahavdil a guy can't be asked to do it. But there is also a different opinion. Like Miscellaneous in Shabbos, Chaf, Ois, Chaf, Vav, Perik Vav, Ois, Chaf. And I'll read the Lashon, I think it's very enlightening. Umasha anu oimrim lenachri, lahaitzi chamim min agacholim b'Shabbos. It seems that Miscellaneous held its mutter to tell the guy to pick up the pot out of the coals and bring it to a yid. Listen to his lashon. Ein oimrim loy lechabois v'lehava. We don't tell him to make a fire bigger or smaller. Chas v'shalom. V'iyu isura ka'avid. I didn't tell him to stir coals. I told him to bring me the pot. The fact that he inevitably stirred the coals, that's his problem and not my problem. So this Rabbi is like our shayil. You tell him an innocent act. The fact that inevitably the melacha happens is his problem. So we have at least one reason that guy is maimini, that pesik reisha, by a guy is mutter. By a yid is a melacha deraisa, by a guy is mutter. Oh. But there's another source. Again, in those days, they didn't have ovens, electric oven, they didn't have steam. They had basically a fireplace, a beis chayre if it's called, a very big fire that kept the house warm. They had a smaller fire to keep cholent warm. So here was the shayla. It was Shabbos morning, and the big fireplace already became a small flame, and the house was very, very cold. You can't leave a house that's cold. You're allowed to call a guy to start a fire, to warm the house. Kol chaylim eitzel kar, as they state in Shulchan Aruch, the end of reisha involved. And the Yid also noticed that the cholent that he made l'kavod Shabbos was now cold. Fully cooked, but now it's cold. Yesh bishul acha bishul. So the Yid knows you're allowed to call a guy to light the fire, to keep the house warm. It's a suffix, you might get sick. But there's no heta to warm the chalent. Yesh bishul acha bishul. So the Trumas Hadesha in Siman Samach Vav has the following suggestion. It's interesting how he says it's Japashtis. First tell the guy, take the cold chalent and put it into the fireplace. Right now there's nothing wrong with that because the fireplace is basically almost extinguished. No fire. Then, innocently, Beheta, tell the guy, it's freezing in here, we're going to get sick, you better light the fireplace. Which he'll do, and he'll warm the house Beheta, and he'll also warm the chalent. Zokti Trumas Hadeshem, it's a pesik reisha that is also warming the chalent on Shabbos, and for that there's no heta. Yesh chilek bein miskaven gama l'lei miskaven the pesik reisha. Zokti Trumas Hadeshem, just take this one step at a time. You told the guy to put the chalent into the oven, that's fine, because there was no fire. Then you told him to light the oven beheta, also fine. Inevitably the chalent becomes warm. Pesik reisha by a guy is mutter. As I state in Trumas Hadeshem. So we have two sources in Paiskim, Rishon, and the translation was an early Achron. Pesik reisha by a guy is mutter. Across the board. Now don't forget we saw half a dozen Rishonim plus we saw the Arzaru is Machmir. How do we paskin? So the Ramah in Reish Nun Gimel, in the end of Sif Aleph, speaks about the first question that we mentioned, about the case of the chalent that's immersed, it's embedded in the coals, and he says that it's better to ask the guy to take the chalent out of the coals. Now if you look in the Ramah, it's not clear if he means if the chalent is actually embedded in the coals or on top. Maybe it's better to ask a guy to do it to avoid shilas. But the Magen Avram says the Mordechai asks to have the guy take it out of the coals, but that guy is maimini is mekel. So at least we have a Magen Avram that's mekel to ask a guy to do an outright pesik reisha. The Mishnah Berurah and Sif Katan Nun Aleph also says it's a machlokes b'makom tzarech Shabbos. You could rely on the shita that pesik reisha by a guy is mutter. And if you look at the end of Reish Nun Gimel, the Ramah quotes the Trumas Hadeshen that you're allowed to make this two-step process to warm your chalent. Tell the guy to put the chalent into the cold oven, light the oven beheta pesik reisha by a guy is mutter. And the Magen Avram spells this out as Sif Katan Mem Aleph, pesik reisha by a guy is mutter. Now just for the record, I have the Magen Avram in six other places I should say. Reisha involve Yud, Reisha in Zayin, Shin Yudal at the end of Sif Katan, Shin Lamed Aleph Tes, Shin Lamed Zayin. I'm sorry, that's altogether 6 places that the Magen Avram is mekel pesik reisha by a guy. Now, I must mention once again, I can't say all agree, because we saw Rishonim on Machmir. Also, the Vilna Gaon on our Shulchan Aruch has a problem. When it's a pesik reisha, deloi nichalei, maybe you can make it by a guy. But here, you want the chalent to be warmed. It's a pesik reisha, the nichalei. You mamish want the chalent to be warmed. In other words, in the first case, when you're picking up the chalent, the fact that the coals get stirred doesn't interest you, because you're finished with the chalent. But in the case of the other case, you want the chalent to get warm. The Goyin says, I don't know how you could be mekel. The Taz has another problem. And the Taz asks, I don't get it. You tell the guy, put the chalent, cold chalent, into the fireplace. Then you tell the guy to light the fireplace. The guy knows what's going on. When he lights the fire to warm the house, he's lighting the fire to warm the chalent. So the Taz says, I can't accept this Ramah. My only point I'm trying to bring out is that it's not a hetabar. We have some Rishonim that are machmir, we have the Vilna Gaon that's machmir, we have a Taz that's machmir. But at the end of the day, if we have a Magen Avram in 6 places that's mekel, there's vaday ubavada yesh shamilis. We'll soon see the Mishnah Berurah is also mekel. But before we apply this lamaisa, I think we have a din v'cheshbon to give. What's taka de pshat? If a yid can't do pesik reisha mechaven choshev pesik reisha presumably is an issa d'oraisa, so how could you instruct a guy to do a pesik reisha? Whatever's also by a Yid is also by a guy. And since it's a reisha, what's the heta by a guy? So the Machzis HaShekel, Afanot, says a very positive. He says that really, for a Yid to do an Issa, even the Rabbanan is Asa. But for a Yid to instruct a guy to do a pesik reisha, who's doing the melacha? At the end of the day, the guy. So if I tell a guy to do an Issa Mamish, that's awesome. But if I tell a guy, which is not me, to do a pesik reisha, which is not that really a Maisa Issa, just pesik reisha, that's like a doubly diluted Issa. Pesik reisha, Amira Leakum is okay. But what I thought was beautiful is the Rav Shulchan Aruch in Reish Nun Gimel Sif Yud. And the Rav says a novel hezbah to pesik reisha. Did you ever wonder, Fakert, why can I directly tell a guy, be Mechal Shabbos? What's wrong? Goyish Shabbos, Chayiv Misa, Fakert. So Rashi, and by Dezara, learns that, you know why pesik reisha is awesome? Because yesh shliach l'dvar aveira l'chumra. If you tell a guy to do Mechal Shabbos for you, so the chumra yesh shlichas la'akum, and shlichas l'dvar aveira, and it's like you're Mechal Shabbos. Zok the Rav, that's the reason why pesik reisha is mutter. Because my instruction to the guy was very clear, bring me the cholent. My shlichus was to do a heta. The fact that inevitably a melacha occurred, that's not my shlichus. My shlichus is for heta, not for issa, and therefore there's no issa Amira Leakum. Now, beautiful, but we could even add even more so. Because another reason in the Rishonim why pesik reisha is why pesik reisha by a guy is why shlichus, why Amira Leakum by a guy is also is really the problem is not that the guy does melacha, but when I instruct a guy paint my house, I'm mentioning melacha. There's an issa d'Rabbanan v'daber dava. I can't tell a yid I'm going to paint my house tomorrow. V'daber dava, you're not allowed to talk about a melacha activity. So Zot Rashi, it's Rashi's second reason, if I tell a guy paint my house, the problem is not that the guy painting my house. The problem is my dibur. Oh, now it's golden. Oy bazoi, if I tell a guy, bring me the cholent, I'm not telling him melacha, don't bring me the cholent. Every pesik reisha, there's no dibur of issa. So there's no shlichas of issa, and there's no dibur of issa. So we have two good reasons why pesik reisha by a guy is mutter. The only tzarachi and ktsas is that there's a third reason for the issa of Amira Leakum. The Rambam says shleitei Shabbos kala beinecha. If a guy could do melacha for a yid, there goes the Shabbos. He'll do everything. Three reasons why Amira Leakum is awesome. Kala beinecha, dibur, and shlichus. If you want to remember it in a very easy way, Shabbos kodesh. Kodesh is Rashi Teves, kala beinecha, dibur, and shlichus. Now the problem is the reason of kala beinecha, l'chayr applies. You're beating the system. You're telling a guy to bring you the cholent, so every time you'll do it to a pesik reisha. Maybe that's why the Rishonim are machmir, or maybe you'll say the fact is that since you have to go roundabout way, it's not kala beinecha. But one thing I could say, pesik reisha by a guy, this fundamental question is a machlokes gedolei Rishonim, a machlokes gedolei aposkim, but the Magen Avram in 6 places is comfortable to be mekel. The Mishnah Berurah seems to also be mekel, Reish Nun Gimel Tzadik Tes, Reish Nun Tes Chaf Aleph, Reish Ayin Zayin, Tes and Shin Lamed Zayin Yud, he's mekel. The problem is in Reish Nun Gimel Chaf Aleph and Reish Nun Tes and Sha'ar Tzion Chaf Vav, he's only mekel l'tzorech Shabbos and le'nichalei. But we could say that if the Magen Avram is mekel, we definitely have what to be Seimachan. The Maramshik in a Tshuva in Kuf Nun Ches, the Marish Taif, Ben Shtaif, Reish Mem Beis, the Chalkas Yaakov, and Archaim Kuf Yud Ches are all mekel. They say the minig is to be mekel. So we'll say that certainly if someone has a situation of need, of a tzorech Shabbos, we definitely have a heta. Amira Leakum tells the guy to do a heta, even though the melacha occurs, pesik reisha, by a guy, the tzorech Shabbos is mutter. Before you apply this lemaisa, I just have one question that I think you're probably wondering. I don't get this. I need hot cholent, so I could be saimach on the Magen Avram. I'll tell the guy to put the cold cholent into the oven. Then I'll tell the guy to light the oven to prevent illness, and I'm okay. But the question is, how could you have hana from the hot cholent? Besides the issa Amira Leakum, there's a very all-encompassing issa that if a guy did melacha for the Yid, even voluntarily, there's an issa to have anah, Ma'aseh Shabbos. A guy walks into your house and puts something on the fire that was raw. If there's no bishul akum, of course, you're now allowed to have anah, even though you didn't tell him. That's the issa of Ma'aseh Shabbos, to have anah for melacha Shabbos. So how could we say that when the guy warmed my cholent, it's mutter, and there's no pesik reisha, there's no issa of Amira Leakum because it's pesik reisha, but how could I have anah from the freshly warmed cholent? It's a good kasha. Someone asked this to Maram Shik, and that tshuva kuf minches. Maram Shik said a beautiful gishmak teretz. There's a fundamental chilik. If a guy walks into my house and cooks something for me, he's cooking for me. That's Ma'aseh Shabbos. A guy did melacha for me is asking me to have anah. But in this case, the guy did a Ma'aseh heta. He put the cholent, the cold cholent, into the oven. The melacha that occurred happened on its own. That's not doing it for me. Madach adaita de nafshe. If the guy did melacha for himself, you could have anah. Here they didn't even do melacha b'kavan. It happened on its own. If it happened on its own, he didn't do it for the Yid. He was totally unaware of the outcome. In other words, pesik reisha, the outcome is not doing it for a Yid, and it's better in the case than the guy did it for the Yid. So just to chaz over briefly, we have pesik reisha by Yid is a melacha reisha if it's nichalei, by a guy just to the other side, like many paiskim is mutter, and b'makom tzarech you could be seimach on that. Okay. Now let me show you how much we could use this lemaisa, this simple concept. Let's start with an interesting question. A person is either in the mountains or he lives in Muncie or Lakewood. Bekitz, he's in the outdoors where you still see earth. You know, in Brooklyn we don't see too much of that, but he has a dirt floor. So the halach in Shin Lamed Zayin and Siv Beis, you're not allowed to sweep an earthen floor on Shabbos because by moving the earth you are being mash v'gumas. That's the melacha of chayrish. The question is, a person just ate outdoors and it's very dirty, can he have a guy sweep out the outdoors? So you wonder, what's the shayla? If a Yid can't do it, how could a guy do it? But the Ramah, in the same Shin Lamed Zayin Beis, Mihu Aydei Eni Yehudi Mutter. A Yid can't sweep the outdoors, a guy can. What's the reisha? What's the cheshbon? Teretz is beautiful. The issa of sweeping, you're not doing a melacha b'yadayim mamish, you want to sweep the floor. It's a pesik reisha that you mash v'gumais. Zok the tila the davar and sif cotton gimel. Pesik reisha aydei akim is mutter. K'maisha kasta magen avram simen reisha and gimel. So sweeping outdoors for a yid is a pesik reisha, but that's why for a guy is mutter. Now what's even more beautiful, the magen avram and Shin Lamed Zayin quotes a Yam Shel Shleim in Beya Perik Beis Simen Lamed Gimel that is machmir. He argued on the Kaira, he argued on the Shulchan Aruch. How could a guy be mutter? What's the Yam Shel Shleimus reasoning? He holds like those Rishonim, pesik reisha by a guy is also very pashut. But at least we have the Magen Avram, seems to be Mekel, the Ramah seems to be Mekel, and the Mishnah Berurah is Mekel. So if you think about it, we have a Ramah, Magen Avram, Mishnah Berurah l'shitasam, that a pesik reisha by a guy is mutter. Obviously, that would be considered a tzarech. There is a tzarech there, whatever the cheshbon is. But definitely, we could say it's a pesik reisha by a guy is mutter. Plus, I want to mention, when the guy sweeps, it's also a loy nichale. The yid doesn't care. He's not plowing his field in Tafshin Ayin Tes, not anytime too soon. So the whole sweeping, even though it is chayrish, is a pesik reisha loy nichale, and it's very possible that even the goyin would be mekel, because here it's a loy nichale. There used to be something, I think today it's a little obsolete, but something called a carpet sweeper. You wanted to clean the carpet, so they had a carpet sweeper. One of the concerns with a carpet sweeper is that it's a pesik reisha that you pull out fibers of a carpet. So that's why on Shabbos we don't use a carpet sweeper, but those that still have it, if a guy wants to use it, or you want to ask a guy to use it, even if it's a pesik reisha, that's pull out a strand, and by a guy that would be mutter. We just had the Yom Tov of Sukkot, and it was a lot of rain, but a lot of the rain was pretty well timed. And assuming a person was waiting, Yoshim Mitzapah to stop raining, and Baruch Hashem it stopped raining. So he has a shlak, the sukkah is dry, but the problem is, how does he get to the sukkah? The sukkah has a shlak that's now loaded with rain, and if he lifts up the shlak innocently, all the rain is going to splash onto the grass. And since he owns the house, he likes that the grass should grow. It might even be a pesik reisha denichale. So the problem, which is very obvious, is for a yid to innocently lift up the shlak l'tzarech mitzvahs yeshiva sukkah is also a pesik reisha denichale that he's watering the grass. And even if it's leniency, there's still an issa. So the question is, what do? The answer is you do what you always do. You learn Shulchan Aruch, you learn halacha, and you know the answer. You call a guy and tell him, please open my shlak, and you're fine. This is a pesik reisha by a guy, and here it's a tzarech mitzvah, definitely. And here, although it's a shtickle, maybe it's nichale, but what could you do? You have to sit in the sukkah. Now, of course, there are some that say that maybe even a yid could do it, because if it's such a heavy rain, the earth is so saturated that extra rain is not going to help. But others question that, you have to know the Metzias. Is that true? Is there such a thing, too much rain? So we were going with a more safe heta. You call the guy to do it, pesik reisha by a guy is mutter. I should mention, if there's no guy available, there would be a different heta for a yid to do it, and that is if it rolls, or we should try to push it onto the pavement. Even though maybe later it rolls onto the grass, that would be a grama. It first went to the pavement. So you have possible stadim b'mekel aidei Yisrael, but better aidei akum in a very simple application of a pesik reisha. Now, let's talk about a pesach shayla. Someone remembered to buy, more romaine lettuce for Yom Tiv, but he forgot to clean the lettuce, and there might be bugs. So for a yid to clean a head of romaine lettuce, which presumably is infested, is probably, if he does it right, that is a pesik reisha, he's going to kill the bugs. Because whatever he does, whatever he uses to get rid of the bugs, unless he does it very gently and slowly, but if he uses a spray or he uses a mix, whatever it is, but he washes or he rubs, but there's probably a pesik reisha, and he's mechaven for that. He wants to get rid of the bugs. So what do you do if you have lettuce that has to be cleaned? So, of course, there is an eitzah, a practical eitzah, mitzad Hilchos Shabbos, to have a guy do it. You tell the guy, clean this well, I don't like those bugs, and he'll go with a vengeance to get rid of the bugs, but he's washing it. He's not doing it necessarily to kill the bugs, it's to clean the bugs. Hopefully that would be considered a pesik reisha by a guy, that's mutter. But of course you have to have seichel. A guy that cleans the lettuce does not mean that it's, nucky from teilayim. So after he does his superb job, make sure you check it well, to make sure he did in fact do his superb job. A fascinating question with the concept of Amira Leakum, have a cup, is the question of using hot water on Shabbos. A simple shaila. It comes up, a person, lamoshel, needs hot water. It's not a pekuach nefesh, he just needs some hot water, let's say, for a child. It could wait, but he would like to have some hot water to wash a child. Let's talk about that case. So of course the best thing is to use an urn, but let's say there's no urn, he wants to put on the hot water faucet and allow the hot water to run out and use it for a child. So the emphasis, without getting into the details, using hot water per se, putting on the hot water faucet, it involves no issa. There's nothing wrong with using hot water. The problem is how the hot water gets there. So to make a very long story short, assume this is the boiler in our basement. A very interesting boiler, a compact boiler, but this is our boiler, okay? The Metzias is when you take hot water in your kitchen sink, you take a cup of hot water, the way it gets there, I'm not going to explain because it's a little complicated, but the way it gets there is the cold water that's waiting, coming all the way from the mountains, from the reservoir, is waiting, pushing to get into the boiler, but the boiler is full. When you open the hot water faucet, you allow a cup of hot water to come out. That doesn't come out through magic. It comes out because the cold water that's pushing is allowed entry, because now you open up the faucet, and a cup of cold water pushes out a cup of hot water. Basically, using hot water, the problem is not the water per se, but whenever you take out hot water from your sink, that amount is replaced. If you take a cup of hot water upstairs in your kitchen, l'kavod Shabbos, that's not a problem. The problem is that a cup of cold water entered your hot water tank. This hot water tank is a kli rishon. There's a fire under it, and even if there's no fire right now, but it's a steaming hot ambatya with very well insulated walls. So if you put a cup of cold water into a hot water tank, you definitely cook it right away, even if the fire is off, and koshkim the fire is on. Which of course is a very serious issa, but not good for a nice Jewish boy. That's cooking a cup of cold water, probably almost instantly. A cup of cold water in a hot water tank. Zok Tishmir Shabbos, Amira Leakum, and I saw the Hilchos Shabbos and Beis Ayin Test says this as well. Oy bazoi, there might be a heta to tell the guy, just give me a cup of hot water from the sink. It's mamish bishul, but it's not a direct bishul. It's what we call a pesik reisha dika bishul. So for Yid to do it is asa. To instruct the guy to give me a cup of hot water, even though it happens inevitably and it's a melacha reisha, but this is pesik reisha by a guy, albeit a melacha reisha, but that's what we saw is mutter based on the guy's maimini. Now you could really argue that this is a leniency for the Yid because he's not using the rest of the water, he doesn't need the rest of the water, whatever gets cooked. But at least we have a scenario of pesik reisha on a very practical level. The same is true, and this brings it even to more practicality. Today many shuls and yeshivas and hotels and probably most commercial urns are no longer the old-fashioned urns that you fill it up and it goes. Today most commercial urns are what's called autofill. In other words, when you take out a cup of water, a cup of cold water goes in its place. Obviously, any automatically filling urn cannot be used on Shabbos. You're taking a cup of water, you're putting a cup of cold water, and that's cooking it. So there's a gabbai, whatever, it was mamunah, that before Shabbos he closes the autofill, so it has X amount of potential, but at least you're not mechal Shabbos. The question is, if someone has a autofill urn, if you got to close it, and now it's being automatically filled, for you to do it is avad nisa, the reisha of bishul. The eitz l'chayre is to have ask a guy to bring me a cup of hot water, and that would be a pesik reisha by a guy. How could you have hana from the rest of the water? A guy cooked that water. For that we'll use the maram shix yesod. This is pesik reisha, but it's not doing it dafka for the yid, and therefore it's mut. The Shmir Shabbos and Hara Dalit points out that's if you ask a guy for a cup of hot water. But if you have a line up in shul and 20 people need a cup of hot water, and they ask the guy, get me one, get me one, get me one, get me one, after a while he catches on. And he realizes what he's doing, and therefore it probably would be more of a ma'aseh b'yadayim. But zicha, it's a nichalei for the guy. So he says that would be considered more of a ma'aseh b'yadayim. But kol zman that you're taking a cup of water here or there, that's a pesik reisha by a yid, that's also the reisha by a guy, would be mutter. I'll tell you another fascinating shayla. This is also quite neigeya. Someone accidentally put on the hot water on Shabbos. Whatever reason, by mistake, you put the wrong faucet on. A child often does it. Now you have hot water that's running. The question is, can you close hot water that's running? Now you're probably wondering, what's the shayla? I mean, you can't put on hot water, that's pesik reisha. Why can I close hot water? So I'll tell you very simply. And again, we'll use this as our hot water boiler. When you have water running, you'll notice after a very short while, the water that comes out is nothing better than lukewarm. You take a few showers, so the water is lukewarm. What's the explanation? Very pashut. If water sits in a hot water tank, it gets cooked. If the hot water is constantly running, so the water is running through the hot water tank. The hot water tank, pashut, doesn't have the ability to cook the water because the water is just running. So it starts, but it runs. So water that's running, the water in the tank is constantly exposed to a minimal amount of heat for a short amount of time, and it remains lukewarm. Now watch this. If a yid goes in his kitchen upstairs and closes the hot water, he innocently closed the hot water. But you know what he did? He slammed the brakes onto this water tank. So now all the water that's there right that second is there to stay. Now all this water is going to get cooked. Till now it would run through the system and remain lukewarm, probably never get cooked. But when you close the hot water that's running, so the water that's there is there to stay, no water's coming in, and the water is in the tank to be cooked eventually. So by closing the hot water that's running, says the Shmir Shabbos in Lamed Beis, Pei Beis, and early in Aleph Mem Ches, that would be the Issa of cooking the water in the water tank. Not the water upstairs, but the water in the water tank is now exposed to enough heat that will be able to cook it. Shaila, so what should I do? The water's going to run a whole Shabbos? The answer is, you could call a guy and tell him, please close the hot water. And that's really a very perfect pesik reisha. Because the guy, even though he became, over the years, became the Shabbos guy, became a shtikla Talmud Chacham, so to speak, he says, I know you can't put on a light, you can't put on a fire, but you can't put on the hot water. I know that also, Rabbi, but what's wrong with closing hot water? Because he's not so, smart to chop the whole implication. So this is mamish, an innocent act that has a secondary effect. So this is a classic pesik reisha by a guy, and therefore by a guy it's mutter. Now, Lamaisa, I just want to mention, if the water is running and there's no guy available, there are some that are makel for the yid to close it. The cheshbon a pesik reisha. So the answer is it is a pesik reisha, but pesik reisha is always when it happens right away. Cut off the chicken's head, pesik reisha. Every pesik reisha happens right away. Here it's not going to cook instantly. Pesik reisha keeps the water in the tank, and now it will get cooked eventually. So it's a pesik reisha bigrama, a combination. Pesik reisha, you slam the brake, so to speak, you keep it in the tank, and then you keep it in a matzah, it gets cooked. Pesik reisha by a grama, many paiskim, certainly some paiskim, the Avnei the Hilchos Yativ, are mekel. Also, I want to mention, if someone just put the hot water on by mistake, so if he closes it right away, it's probably mutter also, because the hot water in the tank is still hot, nothing changed. Additionally, if the water is just dripping very, very slowly, some are also mekel, even for you to close it. Because the little bit of water that's dripping, which means a little bit of water going into the tank, is cooked immediately, so you're not achieving anything really of significance when you close that drip. I'll give you another example of pesik reisha. Let's say you're in the outdoors, and a person notices when he pushes a stroller or a wheelchair, he makes a charitz in the ground. So, making a charitz in the ground, we know that's the famous sugi, that's pesik reisha. That's the case of actually of the goyra adamitas v'safsol shenamad zayin aleph pesik reisha of making a charitz. So in that situation, when a yid will not do it al pesik reisha of oisa charitz, it makes sense that guy could be asked to push the stroller or wheelchair. That would be a pesik reisha by a guy is mut. And Takat Pnei Maven in Siman Ayin Aleph has this het. I should mention, more often than not, when a person pushes a wheelchair or a stroller, it doesn't make a charitz. The pais can refer to this, what the lashon of the Mishnah, kaiveshes. When you push a wheelchair or stroller, especially when the earth is moist, it doesn't make like a furrow that you could plow in it. It presses down, it compacts the dirt that's under it. Kaiveshes is not conducive for charisha. Kaiveshes means all the earth is there, but it's pushed down. That makes it harder to plant. The issa of making a furrow is when you remove the soil and now you have a hole. When you push down the soil, now you have to actually break the soil and then put the seed. So when it's a situation that it's kaiveshes, compacting, versus removing the soil, then even a yid could push that stroller or wheelchair or the like. To have a guy mop the floor using a mop, so for a yid to mop a floor has a compounded problem. First of all, it's a pesik reisha that you're making schita, and also b'chlal there's a very chomadika gezeira d'Rabbanan. We don't mop floors on Shabbos. That's one of the isurim involved in the issa of smoothing out the earth. We don't use mops on Shabbos for the pesik reisha of schita, for the issa of cleaning a floor. It's possible that mitzad the issa of schita, you could tell the guy to mop the floor. What inevitably happens that it ends up being a schita might be pesik reisha by a guy. That's l'chayr mitzad the issa of schita. But I want to mention, I saw the Machzor Yo and Siman Ayin Aleph and Ayin Beis, and others say this also. We have a great reluctance to washing floors, mopping floors on Shabbos. Even sweeping is asa. But mopping floors is definitely smoothing out the earth, and if you learn the sugi, even in a regular floor is asa gzeira atu baya she'ena merutzib. So b'derech klal we avoid using a mop even Rabbi Yakov, but in a case where there is a need, we should mention this, that telling the guy to clean the floor, and certainly if he decides to use a mop, so that would be his adaita denafshe. If you give him a moist mop and say just clean the floor, the fact that inevitably it's a pesik reisha by a guy, there are some that are mekum. We just had an interesting shayla. Someone needed a warm compress, which means you had to take a cloth and put hot water, I guess, from the urn onto the cloth. No problem of bishul. So what's the shayla? For you to do it is a very serious shayla. Putting water on a cloth that the Gemara says, and Mechaber brings it in Shin Beis, Shriyasai Zeu Kibusai. So for you to put hot water onto cloth is mamish the issa of kibus. But look at this. The Seif HaGuda in Erev and Siman Samach Tes, he speaks about a situation where you're making a mila before the mila. Is there any issa in preparing for the mila? Which isurim are involved? So he says to put water onto the sadin, onto the cloth. That's the issa of shriyas zeu kibusay. So the eitzah is have the guy put the cloth in water. Now, and this is quoted by the Magen Avram. Don't put the cloth in water, have the guy do it. Comes again the Hilchos Shabbos in Shin Lamed Aleph, Sif Chaf, he said, I don't understand. Why is a guy mutter? If it's an Issa Deraisa for a Yid, why is a guy mutter? Zot the Tilo David early in Shin Beis, Tezvav, I know why. Pesik reisha by a guy is mutter. As I state in Tilo David. So now we can understand why the Magen Avram brings the Seif HaGuda. Because Vivaid, it's another case of pesik reisha by a guy. This is one of the 6 places that Magen Avram is making pesik reisha by a guy. Now, personally, Zechisi Lahavin, is that a pesik reisha? Or is that a Maisa Issa? You're taking a cloth, putting it into water. That's not pesik reisha, incidental. That's the Issa. The Issa is, don't put a cloth in water. Chayfa Guma, you dig a hole, is not a pesik reisha, is the Issa. Right? So why is this only pesik reisha? This is the Maisa B'yadayim. And I believe that's why the Hilchos Shabbos didn't think that it's a pesik reisha. You look in the Pri Megadim and on the Magen Avram, he also wonders why is it mutter? Maybe by an issa deraisa, yesh matir b'melacha din Torah. He also seems to be saying that something to do with the fact that a child needs it, maybe for the milah. But there has to be a difference between a ma'isa b'yadayim and a pesik reisha. Taking a cloth and putting it in water is the ma'isa b'yadayim l'chayr. That's what I think. Now I'll give you another example where this question comes to the fore. Someone is makbid not to open soda bottles on Shabbos, because when you open the soda bottle, you're making the soda cap. Okay, there's some that are makel, but he's very machmir. He says that if you open the soda bottle, you're making the cap. The cap was not usable, it was not functional. Turning it off, you're making the cap. As I saw in the Sefer, Hilchos Shabbos, page Tafai in Ches, he says, so even if you're makbid not to open a soda bottle, the eight says, ask a guy to open the soda. Inevitably the guy is making a soda cap, pesik reisha by a guy is mutter. We have another wonderful expression of pesik reisha by a guy. So on the bottom he quotes from Shmuel Ayabach Zichaynu Levracha, ein het b'zeh bar. And I think I know why. If you're telling him to open the soda cap, you're telling him to make the cap. That's not a pesik reisha, incidentally. That's directly the mice. But Lamaisa, the truth is, he says, Shmuel Eibach says, if you tell the guy to open and you throw away the soda cap, then Taka the Kavan is not at all for the cap, it's just to open the soda, and that would be mut. Plus, you have to remember, some are makel b'chlal to open it, so the aklam, the makam tzayach, there's much of a more of a tzad to be makel. Question. Someone, an isha has to go to tefillah Friday night, and forgot to comb the hair. So we know, this is the end of Shin Gimel, based on a rivash, combing hair on Shabbos is melacha deraisa. Mishnah Berurah says it's beferish in Reish Samach Sif Katan Aleph, is based on a rivash. Combing hair on Shabbos is a melacha deraisa. Now you're probably wondering, what's the melacha deraisa? It's very simple. When you comb hair and you smooth out hair, there's no issa in that per se. But especially when women want to comb the hair, they want to get out the knots. Now, the truth is, you could comb the hair from Heint bis Morgen. There's no magic that if you comb, the knots somehow get unknotted, get opened. It doesn't work like that. A comb doesn't open knots. How does a comb straighten out the hair? Any knotted hair is pulled out. Right? So when you're combing hair, you're mechavan to pull out the hair that is knotted. And that's why the Mishnah Berurah says it, the Rivash says it, combing is not just a frumkeit, it's an issa derais. Oy bazoi, the chayra, zokted that the B'janarov and Das Torah at the beginning of Shin Mem, he quotes the Chavas Das, that to comb hair on Shabbos, even al yedei akum, even the tzorech tefillah is asa. Because this is Amira Leakum and a melacha deraisa. And you look in the Avnei Nezeh in the end of Kufnan Hey, he retracts what he writes in Aglei Tal, and he says combing hair, al yedei akum should be asa because it's an issa of pulling out the hair. The question only is, why isn't this a heta of pesik reisha by a guy? You tell the guy just to comb out the hair. What happens inevitably is a pesik reisha by a guy. And probably that's what the Maral Diskin meant to say in Kuntres Achra in Siman Hey Sifkat and Kuf Nun. He brings a levush Yisra that's machmir, but you could be mekel aydei akum, he says. Probably he held combing hair is an issa deraisa taka al pesik reisha. But pesik reisha by a guy is mutter. Now, the question only is, and the Das Torah couldn't think of that, the Avnei Nezeh couldn't think of that, but the Teres L'chara is the same point. Combing is pulling out the hair that's knotted. It's not I'm doing a ma'aseh heta, but rather it happens to be, I don't know, I opened the shlak and all of a sudden the water came flying on the grass. That's pesik reisha. But combing is pulling out the hair. And if you look in the Meram Shik, and the truth that I mentioned, he has this very shaila. An isha forgot to comb her hair, could you have a guy comb it? So he says that l'chor this a pesik reisha by an akum, but he said, I'm not sure if that's really a pesik reisha. Because you're mechaven to pull out the hair that's knotted. So at the end he writes something which is not usual. The Ramshik was an Amud Godlan Hayra. He says, Lamaisa eini mateh v'loi oisa. I'm not saying a psak. He says, Lamaisa is a tzorech, and a big tzorech, they should go to tefillah. But he says, I'm not sure this is a pesik reisha. This might be a ma'aseh b'yadayim. So, Lamaisa, if it ever happens, I want to mention this, the best eitzah is right away when the Isha realized that she didn't comb the hair, if it's still bein hashmashis, like any shita, if it's still bein hashmashis, call a guy. Because bein hashmashis, a guy could be called for any Amira Leakum. So even if it is a deraisa. But the point that I think more than the halacha lamaisa of guy combing a hair for a yid, is this nakuda. Avada Amira Leakum by a guy is mut like the Magen Avram. But there's got to be a differentiation between Amira Leakum and Ma'aseh b'yadayim. You can't do a Ma'aseh b'yadayim, it's only a pesik reisha. I'll give you a wonderful mashal. The Bialacha in Shin Zayin Chaf Aleph. This is not even Shabbos. This is a question during the week. He says, you're not allowed to give a guy a melacha gepat ben yoimai and tell him, cook meat in this pot. Of course, not for you, for himself. But you can't give a guy, take this meat and cook it in this pot ben yoimai. Why? It's a pesik reisha that is basta b'cholav. Amira Leakum basta b'cholav. Now, why don't we say, it's not basta b'cholav, it's pesik reisha. When the guy cooks the meat in the melacha kapat, the gliyas come out, and a whole terrible story, it became basta b'cholav. So why is the Bialacha quoting Prima Gadam Asa? There's his pashut. When you cook, that's what happens. So it's not a pesik reisha that by a guy is mutter, it's a melacha gemura by a guy that's awesome. The light in the fridge issue that we began with, l'chayra, for a yid to open the fridge, avad is awesome. Pesik reisha. And even if he doesn't need the light, he has enough light in his kitchen. Pesik reisha by nichle is still awesome by a yid. But Zokt Rav Moshe, in Chelik Beisim and Samaches, the eight is called a guy, and very innocently says, please open the fridge. And the fact that the light goes on is a pesik reisha by a guy, l'tzorech Shabbos, and his mutter. What to me was noteworthy, the Shmir Shabbos quotes Reb Shlomo Zalman, who says that this case could be mutter even like the goyin. The goyin is machma by pesik reisha. That's because it's a nichalei. But here, since you don't need the light of the refrigerator, it's a pesik reisha like nichalei, and maybe like the goyin is mutter. But Shlomo Zalman then adds, and this is something to think about, I'm not sure that b'chlal this is pesik reisha. Now, let me just explain what Shlomo Zalman's, where he's coming from. If you tell a guy, please just lift up the light switch. So you say, what are you telling the guy to put on the light? No, it's only a pesik reisha. No. Telling a guy to put on the light switch is not a pesik reisha. That's the way you put on a light. That's the ma'aseh b'yadayim. Says Shlomo Zalman, again in Shmir Shabbos, Lamed Aleph, Sif Cotton Aleph, telling the guy to open the door of of a refrigerator, that there is no manual switch. The only switch is to open the door is a Maisa B'Yadayim. That's the switch. Pesik reisha is you do a Maisa Heta and a Maisa Issa occurs. But this is the way to put on the light. And he adds, the case of the cholent, tell the guy, bring me the cholent, even though you're mechata b'gecholim, that's incidental. I want cholent. The fact that it happens to be embedded in the coals, that's a different issue, but I'm bringing out cholent. But opening the refrigerator door is putting on the light. Now what does he mean to say? Once we determine it's not a pesik reisha, but a ma'isa b'yadayim, there's no heta ayidei akum. But the truth is, it's not necessarily muchach, because opening a door is a ma'isa heta. Rather, it happens to have an accessory. And Taka, in the Hilchos Shabbos, he quotes Rav Shmuel Leibach, Rav Shmuel Zalman's son, that I Taka argued with my father, I was down lefonav, I don't understand, why isn't this a regular pesik reisha? Lemaisa, Rav Moshe is mekel, the Ber Moshe, Vav Tes, Otzia, Mem Aleph Gimel, and I think that's the minig ha'olam. If you have a real need, you could call a guy to open the door, even though the light goes on. So that l'chayr is step one. Now, of course, if you could manage without opening the fridge, if you have wine and you have the basic necessities, so don't call the guy, but let's say you have the wine in the refrigerator and the gefilte fish and many tzarchei Shabbos, yesh l'hakam. The question is, what do you do now? The guy opened the door, the light is on, what are you going to do? He's going to close it and tomorrow you have to call him again? So Moshe says that, this is a pashut, Moshe doesn't say it, but it's pashut. If you could put a towel on the door, so when you close the door, the door will not close completely and the light will remain on. So hopefully the food won't spoil. There's enough, electricity that will keep the food cold, but you won't close the light. Then you can open and close it freely. But let's say this is not feasible. So Moshe says, then you're allowed to tell the guy to unscrew the bulb, even though you're telling him directly to unscrew the bulb. But this is a melacha of kiboy, that's a melacha shein tzricha legufa. So it's a shvus to shvus, the Rabbanan, Amira Leakum, b'makei mitzvah. The same is true. A person is stuck with an automatic light. He goes in the bathroom in a hospital, hotel, a nursing home. They open the door, the light goes on. He has to use the facilities. So the eight says, have a guy, please open the door. Okay, might ask you why you can open it yourself. That's a different problem. But just open the door. Once a light, that's a pesik reisha by a guy. And again, the same heta. Hopefully we could rely on Ramoshu Siyati. That's a pesik reisha, not a ma'isa b'yadayim. The same is true. You have clothing in the dryer and you want to take it out. But to open the dryer door, the light's going to go on. The simple eitzes tell the guy, open the dryer door, the light goes on. Pesik reisha by a guy is mut. The same is true if you were urged before Shabbos, don't forget to buy this and this, we needed a covered Shabbos, and Baruch Hashem, you remember to buy the covered Shabbos. But the problem is you left it in the car. This is in the mountains, you have an Erev. So for you to open the car door, you're putting on the light. So the eitzes tell the guy innocently to open the car door. The light goes on as a pesik reisha, and then you can take out the food from the car. Today, many hotels, and it's becoming more and more popular, have what's called climate control. When you open the door, during the winter, the heating goes on, during the summer, the air conditioning goes on. It's a major problem. Before you book a room, you have to make sure this does not apply to your room. But if a person had that situation, by opening the door, he's putting on heating or air conditioning, avada, that's awesome. The only eitzah is to get into the room. You could have the guy perhaps open the door, but beyond that you're going to have a problem. But any type of situation, you ask the guy to do something, and the melacha happens, so to speak, automatically, that would be a pesik reisha by a guy, and that would be mutter. We started with the question, if there's no guy available, it's the middle of the night, I need something, can I have a cotton do a pesik reisha? Lamashal, you need something from the refrigerator, very importantly, there's no guy available. Can I ask my child, lo yigi lechinach, very innocently, please open the refrigerator? So pashtus, what's the shaila? If it's yigi lechinach, you can't tell the child to melacha. If it's lo yigi lechinach, so the is not on the child, it's on the father. It's the pasuk ata uvincha vitecha. Even lo yigi lechinach, you can't instruct the child to melacha for the father. And there's no doubt about it, that's even lo yigi lechinach. Just like lahavdul behema is lo yigi lechinach, but it's still asa. So the teretz is a child, lo yigi lechinach for the father is the melacha of the father. So here we have an interesting thing. Some poskim suggest the following. Why is pesik reisha by a yid asa. So Rashi says kimachaven chashavle. So what did that mean? If I open a refrigerator door, I know the light's going to go on, so I'm not just mechaven to open the refrigerator, I'm mechaven also to the secondary action of putting on the light. So part of the pesik reisha is the doer is mechaven for the outcome as well. So I saw a tremendous chiddush, but I want to mention it because it fits into that sugya so beautifully. Rav Scheinberg in the Tshuvan Amatar Madura Beis Chayveres Yud Beis, he says if that's the reason why pesik reisha is asa, because the person that's doing it is aware of the secondary action, it believes melechas machsheves. So maybe by a katan that's lo yigil lechinach doesn't have the das to know what's going on, you can't call it mechaven chashavlei. So it's lacking in melechas machsheves. That's what he says. If there's no das to make it machaven, there's no issur. Now the truth is, this is very hard to accept. I think most importantly, the Poiskim, Rishonim, Achrayim, Magen Avram all discuss Amira Leakum by a goy. Had it been true that a cotton is that pesik reisha by a goy is mutter, had it been true that pesik reisha by a cotton is mutter, it should have said it. They didn't have electricity in times of Chazal, but they had katanim. Which is more practical, to call a guy or have a cotton do it? Had it been true, it should have said it. But the truth is, besides that, in the lumdis is yesh techalek tuva. Because the Rabbi Chanan says could be part of the concept of pesik reisha is if you're mechaven to open the refrigerator, that's the issa. Open the refrigerator is putting on the light. And the child's mechaven to open the refrigerator, that's like mechaven to put on the light. In fact, ad kedei kach, it could be even fakert. The Levaver of the Beis Yitzchak in Memdalit Ches, he wants to say a chiddush punkt fakert. Since a cotton doesn't have das, so maybe even melacha shein tzricha leguf is asa midaraisa de cotton, because he's mechaben to do what he does. Doesn't make a difference the fact that he doesn't know that it's ein tzricha legufa. A cotton does like a robot. His mice is him. Once his mice is him, it doesn't make a difference the outcome. So it could be fakert. Once the cotton does it, and he has das for melacha, you don't have to have das for outcome. So I think I could say that most poskim say that this is not advisable to have a cotton do it. What I could mention is if the child on his own is going to open the refrigerator, to take out something from the refrigerator, and he's lo yegil lechinach, you can allow him to do it, because he's a mesasik. Even though mesasik is not so posh that it's not a ma'aseh issa, but if a cotton is doing it, you could allow him. The truth be told, Rav Zalman says this in the Akdama to Chelik Dalet and Hilchos Shabbos, if a child is going to open the refrigerator for his own tzorich, could be you could allow him even if he gil lechinach. How could that be? So the Bialach in Reish Mem Gimel quotes a Rashba, if a cotton does a melacha d'Rabbanan l'tzorich atzmoi, you could allow him to do it, even a gil lechinach. So the question is, how do you jump from opening a light to be a melacha d'Rabbanan? So if it's not an incandescent bulb, let's say if it's an LED bulb, which is not a real melacha d'Raisa, perhaps you could be makel in that situation. The child's doing it l'tzarech atzmai. Achrei chav, I must mention this following ha'ora. Someone is in the mood to play with a chicken's head. Okay? Don't want to see why, but this is something that brings us to the side of the sugya. Is it mutter to tell a guy, I need a chicken's head, could you please arrange that? So, there's a chicken walking around with a head so far, but you need a chicken's head. So the shaila is, can you ask the guy who's going to understand and cut off the chicken's head? So until today you say, well, what's going on? Are you telling a guy to shech the chicken? There's no heter on Shabbos. Okay, it's not shchita, kosher shchita, but it's definitely netil shama. But the truth is, for today, this might be mutter l'chayra. Cutting off a chicken's head, what's that called in Lashon HaGemara? Pesik reisha. So if you go with the Magen Avram in 6 places that pesik reisha by a guy is mutter, why can't I tell the guy, I need a chicken's head? It doesn't sound right, but why not? So the teretz is very pashut l'chayra. The Kesef Mishnah in Hilchos Shabbos Aleph Vav asks, what's the difference between pesik reisha and melacha and tzricha legufa? Chayfa gum vein tzarach la'afra is asa. Why isn't it pesik reisha? Teretz is very pashut. If you tell him digging is the ma'aseh issa, but opening a shlak is not a ma'aseh issa. Opening a shlak when there's water on it is a ma'aseh issa. In other words, the Kasamish is saying to be studied, we said till now many times. There's a difference between pesik reisha and ma'aseh issa. I'll give you an example. Putting a cloth in water, some call it pesik reisha, but we saw that it might be a ma'aseh b'yadayim. So now here's the chiddush, which I'm going to give you for homework. Think about it. If I tell a guy pesik reisha, the pesik reisha, tell him to cut off the head of a chicken, or tell him I need a toy called the head of a chicken. That is pesik reisha. But Zakti Kapes Tamarim and Sukkah Lamed Gimel, believe it or not, pesik reisha, it's the literal pesik reisha, might be a ma'aseh b'yadayim. Pesik reisha is a mashal that it happens inevitably. But the actual pesik reisha, cutting off the head, is maybe more than a pesik reisha, it's a ma'aseh b'yadayim. So until further notice, don't play with a headless chicken. I couldn't talk to you all.
Shem Ergens, your Torah like to be Gashikaf, Smith for today's share. Shem Ergens, your Torah like to wish a mazel tov to Rav Yitzchak Stern on the engagement of his daughter, the Kala, to the Sachi, the Shnachas, to the Yofa, B'Shotov, Mitzlachas. Rav Smith will give a seeker on the share in about 5-10 minutes. So, Chananya Banakashem, Rosh HaKadosh Baruch Hu, L'Zakes, as Yisrael, Figure Hebron, Tar Mitzvah, Shenema, Nahosman, Sidri Yad, Tevi Yada.
Shvei Rabbo Mevarach V'Olamu B'Yom Hayom.
That's not called Was da Mittag mit der Gere. Wen sind die Studie da? You don't want to tell them.
Why can't you go to and if it is electronic, let's do
Kom gaan gehaald.
That's what you need to solve problem.
I only have one problem with the
Auto fill. Why can't he?
It's mechanical.
I'm saying, so you have to go over there. What's the problem? Just close it.
It's a mechanical thing. How do you get so many goy? Every little thing.
One spot.
You have a schlock, you open it up with the goy.
We'll do it. Since the tenant has a good. Okay.
With the electric ones? Oh,
Yes, I know it's twice like the
Shmira. Everybody say that I'm excited to hear the seeking of today's share.
Another minute, I want to make a statement about summary.
Gonna start as soon as I push the button. It's gonna start automatically.
Yeah. It's a reisha. Wonderful. Okay, what else? Oh. Okay, just the review we learned today, Bez Hashem, pesik reisha means that a person does one act and something else inevitably happens. Opening a refrigerator and the light goes on, or the case of washing onto grass. And since the melacha and the action is inseparable, it always happens, it's mamish one. The Rashi says, Ki mechaven chashav lei. In other words, you're mechaven to wash your hands, you're mechaven to water the grass. You're mechaven to open the refrigerator, you're mechaven to put the light on. And that's why, according to the Rishonim, if it's a pesik reisha, the nichale, it's a reisha. Because you're mechaven to the outcome, since it's inevitable that will occur. There are shitas in Rishonim, and the Magen Avraham seems to endorse that shita, that pesik reisha is also for a yid midaraisa, but you're allowed to instruct a guy to do something which is a pesik reisha that melacha happens. Either the pshat is it's a doubly removed issa, it's Amira Leakum that you're not doing, and a pesik reisha, or like the Rav says, there's no shlichus, or we added there's no dibur. But the point is that there are many machmirim, but the Magen Avraham, the Mishnah in most places is mekel. So lamaisa, some limit it only mutter when it's loy nichalei, and certainly if it's a tzarech Shabbos, but definitely if it's a tzarech Shabbos, we could say Amira Leakum, even to do melacha, the reisha that comes out with pesik reisha, we have enough to be saimach to be mekel. And the examples we gave is sweeping a dirt floor, a yid is asa al tmash v'gumas, for a guy is muta. A guy using a carpet sweeper, even if it pulls out strands, is a pesik reisha de la nichale, which would be muta. Opening a shlak, even though the rain will go onto the grass directly, is a pesik reisha. By yid is asa, by a guy would be muta. Cleaning vegetables that are infested, for a yid is asa, for a guy would be muta al pesik reisha. Using hot water, for a yid is asa, for a guy would be muta. The urn that has an autofill that was not shut off should not be used by a yid. A guy could use it. I must mention, a few people told me, I was unaware of the mitzvah, that an autofill, there's a better eitzah, you don't have to have a guy do it, just close off the autofill. I didn't have time to research this, but if your autofill is only a totally mechanical act, there's no light, there's no other electricity, and a yid could close it, that's certainly better than having a guy do it, so close the autofill so the yid could use it without a shayla. To close running water, Aida Yisrael, we should refrain from it. It might be pesik reisha by grama, that might be mutter, we said, but definitely to have a guy close the running water or a drip, that's a pesik reisha, by a guy that's mutter. Pushing a stroll and a wheelchair, if it's kaiveshes, if it compacts the earth, a yid could do it. If it's chayrish, if it makes a furrow, a yid cannot do it, but a guy could be asked to do it. That's pesik reisha by a guy that's mutter. Mopping should be avoided even a yakum, but b'shas atchak, there's a heter to use a mop with a guy, that would be a pesik reisha by a guy. Putting water onto a cloth is the problem of shrias ezeu kibusay, and the poskim are mekel. We're not sure exactly if the heter is pesik reisha, maybe this is a ma'aseh b'yadayim, but the Magen Avraham seems to be mekel, b'makom of a tzarech for a cotton for sure. This would be certainly the tzarech cotton, that would be matter, even though shrias ezeu kibusay. Opening soda bottles like the akum, we found that tzad to be mekel, that's a pesik reisha by a guy, especially if you throw it out. Combing hair, I should mention, we saw it's a machlokes. Some say aydi akum is also, some are mekel aydi Yisrael. Someone pointed out correctly, if the isha combs her hair carefully and does not discover any knots, so obviously the chafifa was done properly, it's not to be makel even on the Yisrael, because you're combing very carefully, and there will be no pulling out hair, because you will stop by any resistance. But we're talking about when you get to a knotted hair, then we have that shaila if there's a heta aydei akum or not. Opening a refrigerator that puts the light on, we have a tzad to be makel aydei akum. If there's a tzarech Shabbos, once it's open, either put a towel, don't close it correctly, or have the guy unscrew the bulb. The same is true opening the car door, dryer door, an automatic light in the door. Any case, aydei Yisrael is an issa reisha, aydei akum, the chayr should be mutter. A person should not use a cotton for pesik reisha. It seems that's more of a ma'isa issa. Even lo yagil lechinach, he shouldn't tell the child to do it. There's a heta if the cotton opens the tzarchaya, it's an issa derabanan. And most interestingly, a pesik reisha, cutting off the chicken's head, asking a guy to give me a chicken's head, might not be pesik reisha. That's muta aydei akum, might be a ma'isa biyadayim, and would not be muta aydei akum. Okay. But it's still keeping the thermostat going, no? Something is there. How's the thermostat working? What regulates the refrigerator?
It's off. You pull out the plug.
He's saying when the refrigerator is off, you pull out the plug.
Oh, man.
No, that's still.
The guy is going to
No, it's like a Shabbos.
the guy is going to